All right, we've got as this hello, as this is this time of year. Got people coming from all over. Got meetings that are running late, so we're going to give our members a couple minutes to get here. Hit your button. Okay. Welcome to Subcommittee of Industry and Labor. Probably going to be our last meeting of the year. Sorry for the tardiness. Punctuality is a big thing with me, but the legislature teaches you to forego some of that. So a lot of meetings going on. I'm going to ask Representative Anderson to open us in prayer.
If y'all will bow with me. Dear kind and Heavenly Father, God, we thank you, Lord, for gracing us to live in this great state, God. We thank you for the opportunity to represent your people in this state, God. We ask for your wisdom, your knowledge, and your discernment as we do that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Today we're going to hear House Bill 1432 by Representative Matt Reeves. And I think you've got some familiar guests with you today. And so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This may be the last bill of 2024, but hopefully it'll be the first hearing of 2025. This is something that will take more than a year to get done. Proud to have Representative Ray Martinez co-sponsor it with me in a bipartisan group of legislators in the House. This is a bill where the Georgia House is taking the lead with this legislative initiative to meet workforce needs here in Georgia by taking the lead on the issue of legal immigration guest worker program. As we all know, the federal government is in total disarray when it comes to immigration, and the ones who are suffering because of that are our small businesses and other businesses who have workforce needs that can be filled with a functional guest worker program for legal immigrants. This bill would take the lead and set up the infrastructure for Georgia to be able to put a legal guest worker program to work here in Georgia. Let me tell you about House Bill 1434, the state administered guest worker program. What this will do is it asks the federal government to implement a more robust guest worker program and to devolve or engage in federalism to allow the state of Georgia to administer that program. which we all know we can do a lot better than what they're doing right now up in Washington. It provides for the state, in lieu of the federal government, to determine bona fide labor shortages in Georgia. The state is better equipped to determine which jobs are difficult to fill in Georgia and how many positions need to be filled in Georgia, where the shortfall is. Existing federal quotas are simply inadequate and insufficient to address our employment needs, our workforce needs in Georgia, as we all see every day. We all are concerned about the federal government's mishandling of the border, and what the federal government disarray has done is it's incentivized people to work under the table and underground. And what we should have in America is an above-board employment system where work is performed lawfully at the proper wage rate and in a legal manner. There are isolated instances of where federal authorities have done that over the years, but having a better guest worker program will benefit the workforce and jobs here in Georgia. Guest workers, what this bill says is the guest worker must come from their mother country to the USA and not have previously entered the USA unlawfully. That's a prerequisite. So we want to, lay down the law and say, don't break the law and cross the border illegally and then expect to take advantage or engage in Georgia's good guest worker program. Secondly, the employers who want to participate in this Georgia legal guest worker program will pay a fee to the State Department of Labor, provide benefits similar to other workers employed by the employer, pay the prevailing wage and other obligations, and that's outlined in the bill, lines 61 to 103. It is an annual program, therefore, if we don't like what we're seeing, it's something that can be terminated. It is renewable. There will be a guest worker ID card, not driver's license or anything like that, but there will be something that the guest workers will have to show that they're validly employed in the program. And there are penalties, strict penalties for any employers who cross the line and do illegal immigration in the course of participating in this program. There will be both civil and criminal penalties. That's in lines 125 to 134. The Department of Labor will be empowered to adopt rules and regulations on this issue that's important to our workforce. The program would be effective when the federal government gets around to permitting a state worker program, so it's something that would sync up with the federal authorities. But again, we're taking the lead and we're laying the foundation for them to empower the state to do this. There is some level of discussion of this in Washington, but Georgia would be the first state out of the 50 to take the lead and do this thing that makes good common sense and say that Georgia's taking responsibility for our workforce. We would support the matching of the employers and the foreign legal workers who want to be honest and work according to the law and the rule of law in an orderly and successful economic development effort, which is just counter to what we have right now with chaos and illegal immigration in Washington. This is honest work that would be performed with necessary protections for both employers and people who want to work in Georgia. This is something where we're taking leadership, and it would break the cycle of having people here in Georgia working underground illegally in violation of federal law and in precarious legal status, and who more than likely are willing to break state law as well. We don't need to have the status quo going on any longer. We need to give a means for employers as well as employees to take responsibility to meet our workforce needs through legal immigration. So this is leadership. That's what this is about. I come from Gwinnett County, just like Representative McLean. We have a lot of legal immigrants who've waited years and paid a lot of money and filled out a lot of paperwork to immigrate legally. A lot of them are successful small business people now, and they have workforce needs, and they know better than anybody else the way to do it legally. And so these kind of good ideas have come from the grassroots level, and Georgia would be taking a lead. So I really am grateful for this hearing and to get the ball rolling here in 2024 for this future idea where we are ahead of the curve nationally on this, and we can implement something to meet workforce needs. I read waiting on a lengthy Senate committee yesterday, and the AJC that we are have the second biggest healthcare shortage in the country. With all the growth we've had in Georgia the last 10 years, we have some workforce needs, and this can help fill it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe some people have signed up to speak, so glad to answer any questions as well as to hear from some informative additional speakers.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions. I'm going to start first. So we can only do this with the permission of the federal government?
With immigration, at the end of the day, being a federal government program, they're going to have to get their federal credentials, so we will have to have some level of federal cooperation. We can't unilaterally bring immigrants into Georgia without them being cleared federally, so there will be some degree of federal cooperation, but we're making it easy. We're making it easy.
Yeah, I love the bill.
We're making it easy for a dysfunctional bureaucracy.
Yeah, okay. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Reeves, on lines 64 through 68, where it references the employer agreed to provide health insurance. What about employers that, even with the guest workers, will still fall below the mandated employer-provided health insurance level?
That is subject to debate and the work of this committee and the legislature. But what we didn't want to do is have kind of a two-tiered system where, you have resident workers and they get one level of employee benefits, and then you have sort of the second-class legal immigrant guest worker program. We wanted to set a high bar to make sure that, the employers are not bringing in people, paying them low, and then sending them to the hospital for public assistance. So that was the intent there. If there are some good ideas to get that done, what we didn't want to do is have any liabilities at the local or state level by virtue of this guest worker program. We wanted it to pay its own way.
Gotcha. Okay.
That was a good catch. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for bringing the bill. So, and we're talking about individuals that are coming from other countries, right?
That's right.
Okay, so culturally and traditionally in other countries, and even here in America, families live together. And so on lines 55 through 57, where it describes a guest worker participating, they would not be allowed to bring an of-aged or ailing parent that they may be taking care of in their household with them. Is that correct?
That's right. Their spouse and minor children. And this is somewhat modeled after, there have been some success stories over the years sporadically at the federal government level on agriculture. And there are some places, in the Western Hemisphere where, in this town in Mexico, let's pick that as a country, they frequently come up here to do, peach or other agriculture, and they come back and forth. But the idea is not for them to permanently be in America, do this. This is a true guest worker, temporary legal immigration program. It's not something where they come here and stay and bring chain migration. This is very limited and targeted opportunity to engage in legal immigration through this guest worker program.
Thank you.
Thanks.
McLean or Holly? McLean? All right, Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I have to say I do appreciate the legislation, but as I look at all what the employer agrees to do, I just concerned about workers' compensation, 3 meals a day, living, and insurance. Is that a cost to somebody, or I'm just trying to figure out,
Again, this program is geared towards employers who are above board and saying, here's our workforce need, and we're willing to pay for it and take responsibility out in the open. Here are the benefits we're going to provide. This is a high-quality labor initiative to make sure that, this is not something where we're bringing in people who are going to create a public liability. This is for employers who want to have high standards of benefits for their workers for the benefit of our workforce and economy here in Georgia. High standards.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a follow-up? Because I guess the reason I said it, because on line 88 you were talking about the federal minimum wage or the minimum wage of this state, which is $5.15. and the federal minimum wage is $7.25.
That's right.
So I'm just trying to, I hear you say on one end about a high quality, but then I get down to the wage part.
Well, on 89, it says whichever is highest, so it would go with the higher of those two, plus those benefits. So it's minimum wage plus benefits. And again, it's something where you've had a person who has not crossed the border illegally. They're engaged in, it's mutually beneficial to the employer and the employee in the way of pay and benefits.
Mr. Chairman, just one more question, then I'll be finished. I guess my only concern is, so what jobs are we talking about?
We have heard from hospitality, restaurant and service, agriculture. Those are ones we've heard from so far. I heard about this in my community, definitely in hospitality. They get the sense that some other states are doing a little bit better or urgent of a job than Georgia is in making sure that people can come to America legally to work in there. And they have huge shortfalls of labor. So that's one that comes to mind. I'm proud of Gas South Arena in our area, and it's growing there, and you've got a lot of good hotels, a lot of good restaurants, and so making sure that we have good workforce needs met there, that's one thing that comes to mind.
Mr. Chairman, I did say one more, but I guess I just need to get, in this guest worker program, when I come over, just to give me an example, I come over, I'm legal and all that. I stay 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
It would be first of all, annual. I think that's the standard, and it's renewable, but it's seasonal. Gas South Arena, using that example, you've got concerts. They're on a schedule. Sometimes the year are busier than others. So, various agriculture definitely is seasonal. I hear the legislature meets when it's cold because that's when the farmers weren't out working when we were even more of an agriculture state. So it is something that would be part of the year, and it would be year to year as opposed to like years on end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Reeves, for at least trying to find a positive way to deal with those who are needed to be guest workers. That I'm actually quite curious. As I can understand, I guess from your testimony that you've been able to consult for those businesses who've been able to enjoy having these guest workers employed by them. But have you? Are there any agencies that you've actually consulted with regard to the quality of life for the guest workers?
Two that come to mind are Department of Labor and Department of Agriculture. I haven't spoken to them. My heart goes out to Commissioner Thompson for recovery from the serious illness he's undergoing, and Commissioner Harper, I know, is very high energy. So those would be two who would be very engaged. From growing up, my parents growing up in Southwest Georgia and going to college in Middle Georgia, I'm familiar in agriculture. They've had some limited success of legal guest worker programs, but this really is a legislative initiative where Georgia takes the leadership. So we are creating the prototype, unfortunately, but there's a lot of opportunity in that. So we get to have our fingerprints on this and meet the needs of Georgia's workforce by taking the lead.
Yeah, I think, and while the aspiration is appreciated, I think because of, I know for even prior to the pandemic, workforces up in Gainesville who were migrant workers had experienced some really harsh working conditions there, and I know that it doesn't look really good on our state in order to employ a workforce here if we know that their health and safety actually may be at risk. And that's why I was concerned with maybe I can understand the necessity to speak to, and again, nothing to disparage the commissioners over agriculture or over labor, but because the quality of life of the guest worker, it may be necessary to ascertain their conditions, or whether or not just 3 hots and a cot is going to be like sufficient, right? Or some of these, I think it's I think it's admirable, but it would be really good to see as to whether or not we are looking at being able to supply for the survival of a guest worker and in a necessary way that's able to actually help them sustain a life, being that we know that they're not working under the same conditions as would a naturalized U.S. citizen. And I think it's very good. It would be really, I think it would be beneficial for us maybe to even, I know that's not in this bill, but it would probably be necessary for us to actually look at maybe a study committee to ascertain all of the quagmires, even federally, because these workers will have to actually satisfy some mandates from the federal government. So it's good for us to be first out, but I would hope that maybe we might be able to better ascertain the conditions necessary for that migrant worker to be able to sustain themselves beyond just kind of the basics, because I think none of us want to see us revisiting programs of America's past that didn't do well for those who came to the state. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And responding to that, a couple of things that come to mind are the alternatives that we have right now are paying overtime or having employment workforce needs that aren't met, and you just have underutilized capacity. You can't keep up with demand and supply, or unfortunately, temptation of illegal immigration. So having a good legal guest worker program would meet gaps in the workforce. It would keep current employees from getting overstretched, and then it would remove that temptation and that sort of under-the-table reward of engaging in illegal immigration. Additionally, some of the health care and housing things we put in this bill, we didn't want to make health care and housing stress here in Georgia worse through this program. We wanted to make it better. The employers who are doing this program need to have the health care and the housing issues sorted through and worked out. So that's the intent of that part of the bill.
Hey, if y'all would let me, we've got 3 speakers signed up who are unbelievably, that I have the utmost respect for, and I happen to know all 3 of them. If we could, thank y'all, and then, because they may actually answer your question, because all 3 of these people, Jay Morgan, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I want to applaud you first for having this hearing today on such an important issue. I represent the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association. Much has been said about hospitality already, and I won't repeat that, but just want to remind everybody that the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association, the folks that work there at that front desk, make sure that room is ready, that they are often some of the first people that people visiting our city and our state get to meet. And it's important to continue to have that workforce, have a quality workforce, and I think that is what Representative Reeves is seeking to do here, is make sure that we do have that guarantee of that quality workforce so that Georgia can remain the #1 state in the country to do business. And I promise you that is the only time today that I have said that. So Representative Reeves, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay. Mike Giles with Georgia Poultry Federation, which, thank you. In my area, we have Flaxman Poultry.
Yes, sir.
Who has tried everything in the world legally, and it's still not working. So give us your perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Giles. I'm president of the Georgia Poultry Federation. We represent the companies that grow and process chickens and the growers and allied companies that support the industry here in Georgia, which is the nation's leading broiler producing state. I want to thank Representative Reeves for introducing the bill, House Bill 1432, and in beginning this discussion. I think the bill acknowledges that there are business sectors potentially and regions where the local labor supply does not meet the employer's needs. And I think that is the core purpose of this bill. One of the features that we appreciate the most about this bill is that it creates a mechanism, a data-driven mechanism to establish when there is an actual need for guest workers in a certain category or sector. That is something that we, the Federation, have been advocating for at the federal level really for decades. And since I've been at the Federation the last 25 years, anytime we've advocated for immigration reform at the federal level, one of the things that we push for is let's put in a mechanism so that we can demonstrate through data that the local labor supply isn't meeting the need. So then there could be guest workers in certain categories that would be available to businesses. So this is an approach that we've advocated for a number of years, and I believe that being more strategic about our nation and by extension states' approach to securing the workforce that we need, I think is a good step forward. So we appreciate again Representative Reeves introducing this bill, and look forward to the discussion that it might promote next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Les Snyder.
Members of the committee, my name is Les Schneider. I'm an attorney with Wimberly and Lawson, and obviously my gray hair indicates that I've been around this place far too long. But at the end of the day, I wanted to come to you, and I know the word pro bono around here sometimes is shocking, but every once in a while I like to work on stuff that I think is best for the state of Georgia. That's not to say that things I get paid for are not for the best of Georgia, but I think this idea is something we've got to pursue. This idea really came about because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, ironically enough, that said New York's leadership wants Washington off its back. And that was the whole issue when a number of people were bussed up from New York, from other parts of this country to stay up there. But it had an impression on me because it pointed out that there were two House members up in D.C., Ken Buck of Colorado, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who put a bill in that had bipartisan support that basically said that we are being stupid as the federal government to let the federal government decide what the labor shortage is in the state of Georgia or in the state of Colorado or anywhere else. No place can figure that out better than right here at home. Now, there may be a shortage of agricultural workers. There may be a shortage of hospitality workers, but there's also a shortage of IT workers, and there's a shortage of other types of workers across a lot of different industries. The Georgia Department of Labor is best fixed to doing that. And what these people said in this bill on the federal level is, let the states decide whether they need 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 workers. Don't get only a small percentage of what you need. Attract talent from other parts of the world if we need it. So basically, this bill was drafted with that idea in mind. And it didn't take very long to get immediately 6 Democrats and six Republicans on this bill down here, because they understood the problem that we have. And going to your point, Representative McClain, this is about getting talent in all levels of jobs, no matter what the job is. It may be a job that you and I look at as difficult and menial, or it may be something that is very sophisticated. And we're letting people have a path here legally to come in. So after that idea, we are basically putting this in place, just like Jay Powell years ago put in the bill relating to sales tax revenue in the event that the court case relating to Amazon was going to allow this state to tax internet sales. So we are trying to be a leader. And look, I've been here a long time. I've seen profiles in courage, I've seen profiles in cowardice, I've seen profiles in caution, and I've seen profiles of vision. This is a profile of courage and vision. And I certainly salute Representative Reeves and all the other people who signed this bill, because they want to do something positive regarding immigration. Going to Representative Holly's point, the federal program is to make sure that people aren't abused. But if we have it down here, we can better address any abuse that's occurring. We could make sure that employers are doing the right thing. Who better but this state should be able to decide what is a labor shortage? As a labor attorney, I have had many instances where employers have told me, we've got jobs searching for people. This bill answers that issue. It's not taking away a job from anybody who lives in this country. It's simply recognizing where we have a shortage, whether it's a particular craft or anything else, to allow somebody to come here and work lawfully, not sneak over the border, not have all the ancillary costs that are associated with doing things illegally. So I would implore you all to really, next year, not only be supportive of this bill, but sign on, and let's do something bipartisan to really show the rest of the country that this is needed and this needs to be addressed. I would like to be able to say that Georgia has some leadership among its employer community and people who want to work lawfully in this country. Let's help to deter the unfortunate results on the border by doing something positive, not mean-spirited. It may be that we end up with a lot more IT workers from other countries, or it may be that it's going to be in the hospitality or in other industries. But this bill begins to do the safeguards, and no one is saying that this bill is the repository of all good ideas. But as Representative Reeves indicated, we need to reach out to labor, to agriculture, and anybody else who has a good idea to build this. But let's be first, not last, in doing it. And if we can get this passed, perhaps we can send a message to Washington that it's time for you to pass the enabling legislation that allows this to be done. I won't go on any more than that. I certainly will answer any of your questions, but I think this is a positive thing we can do, working together to do something that's, better for this state and probably better for the country. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. And I'm going to take them in an order of which they, Chairman Petrie, do you?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. And then Representative Barton? Okay. All right. Chairman Bonner?
Hey, thanks, Chairman, and I apologize also, Representative Reeves, if I missed some of the explanation. Just a couple of quick questions. On page 2, line 36, who are legally present in the United States and are available to fill job openings. Should that say unwilling? I mean, how do you identify? I mean, what part of the workforce is available versus unwilling to take some of these jobs?
Well, citizens of the country. Okay, listen, the entire guest worker program, the foreign guest worker program, is one where there is the determination now by the federal government to determine what are labor shortages in this state. Unfortunately, that has not always been very accurate. This bill would allow that labor shortage to be determined by the Georgia Department of Labor as to where the labor shortages really are. And it would only be people, as Representative Reeves previously testified, that would come from their home country into the United States, not in the United States illegally or anything like that. They'd have to come from their home country, come here, work, whether it's for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is, but it would have, the labor shortage would be determined locally here.
Yeah, understand. Thank you for that. And just a couple of other quick quick questions. So what the ID card that's contemplated in the bill,
Yes.
what does that look like?
That is a card that has been always given out pursuant to the federal guest worker program to make sure that person is identified as someone who's lawful to be in this country, similar to if somebody had a visa or something else to show that they are lawful in the country, so these people are not without any sort of identification.
But and is it reasonable to assume so nothing on that identification card would lead anyone to believe that individual was a citizen of the
No.
U.S. or had any of the rights?
Yeah, in
therein?
fact, the card is very specific
Okay.
as to what they are.
Okay, and then the next question is, I see where the bill, what's contemplated allows for not only the worker, but also their immediate family to include their spouse and minor children.
That's correct.
Would those minor children, well, I guess, would the spouse be able to work on under this program, or would they have to be qualified to work? And then would the minor children have access to that local school system?
Those people, as far as the spouse is concerned, as with the federal program, they would have to be cleared as a guest worker per se. They just couldn't work and go to McDonald's and say, I'm going to apply for a job. And as far as the minor children are concerned, again, as to whatever the law would allow as to whether these children are guest workers or not. If they're not, they cannot work.
No,
And if they go to
schools.
the school, it would be according to what the prevailing federal law is. And I want to make sure that I'm accurate on that, so I'm going to double check that and search you out tomorrow to give you the answer to
that would be
question.
great. That would be great to know. And then one more question on and I just didn't see it in the bill, but I see where that if the guest worker violates the provisions therein, that there is a penalty to include a fine and imprisonment.
That's true.
So what about actually removing that individual and that family from the U.S.?
That is a consequence of what happens when you violate the guest worker program. You will be sent home, and you will not be able to come back and participate as a guest worker subsequently.
Okay, so is that kind of just implied in the language here that they would be deported at some point, or?
Representative Bonner, the key issue is what passes on the federal level.
Okay.
And if the federal level sends them home, which they presently do, we would have to abide by that also. So again, we have to not only adhere to whatever in this piece of legislation, but what is in the present federal law. And the present federal law does remove them and send them back to their home country.
Okay.
So this is enabling legislation if the federal government decides to do something. So don't hold your breath.
That's right.
But this just tightens up what Georgia would do if the federal passes the worker program.
Yeah, understand. Thank you, Chairman. And just on a positive note, I will say that I just appreciate in general anything that we can do at the state level to solve our own problems and not rely on the federal government. I certainly support that. Thank you.
Right.
And I know there are some policy choices about the spouse and minor kids, but I think generally people behave a lot better with their spouse and kids around.
We know you do. Is that McLean? Representative Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Snyder, for being able to give us your take on it, especially above the apparently we're missing the really great party in the hallway. So, I was actually to follow up with Chairman Bonner's points. I was curious typically for when these guest workers are here and they do have minor children, are the minor children kept? Are there schooling? Is it made separate currently? For those minors who are here, or are they? Will they be enrolled into a local school? Where you may have a situation where these unnaturalized children are receiving education being funded by the Georgia taxpayer. Is that normal, or in our current situation, are these minors tucked away in like on the property, in a separate place?
As with Representative Bonner, I promise I will search you out tomorrow and give you the dispositive answer. But at the end of the day, I can assure you that the feds already dictate what occurs with that. But I want to make 100% sure before I make representations to either one of you. But I think this is all about trying to do this on the above board criteria, and it would surprise me if in fact, these children get tucked away in a closet and, get private lessons on whatever it is. But I want to make sure I can get that answer for you.
Thank you. It would probably surprise me as well. And the only other thing that I had for the enforcement of the measure from lines 126 to 134. Typically, when they come through for that program, specifically if they're working, let's say, just as an example, let's say they're coming over here from Mexico, they work in the poultry industry. Is there, for that guest worker program, is it specific, their employment, is it specific to that particular necessity, that particular opening, or within the space of 30 days that they are, let's say if they find that one occupation with that one employer is been something they either want to switch or becomes uncomfortable, are they able to transfer to another employer to work within that 30 days before they incur a penalty?
My understanding, and again, I will double check this, but my understanding is that number one, there'd have to be a labor shortage in the particular job that they're working.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I don't believe you just get to work for employer A and then all of a sudden just walk over to employer B in the same position, but I will double check that for you. But I know what we're looking for, I would think, as a state, is a fairly tight situation to determine, does this job, is there a labor shortage, and does this company really have a labor shortage, and not do it to let that company act as a conduit for other companies. I have been involved with what I call shenanigans of other employers who basically bring people in, really don't have jobs for them, but tries to place them for a fee to other places. I don't think that's where we want to go.
Okay, I know we started late, but I want to be respectful to public safety, who's got a incredibly full agenda. I know that because I'm on it. So with that, we're adjourned. These guys that spoke are in the halls. Search them out if you got additional questions. Thank you. We're adjourned.